dann sind da unten die Flüchtlinge und würden da mit den 500-Euro-Scheinen oder was weiß ich nicht alles stehen, von dem wir würden so machen und Fotos machen. Ja, und ich habe gesagt, der soll sich mal um seine Arbeit kümmern.
Ich kann aber schauen, ob ich ein paar so Einspieler finde, so mit Applaus und Klappen und so. Genau. Wobei ich habe kürzlich eine coole Seite entdeckt, die heißt Tabletop Audio. Kannst du also Hintergrundmusik für Rollenspiele, Tabletop-Spiele und so machen. Da gibt es halt ein paar fertige Tracks mit verschiedenen Stimmungen. Und es gibt auch so Dinge, wo du dir zusammenklicken kannst. Dann hast du Hintergrundmusik, also entweder ruhig oder Action oder Kampf oder so. Und dann kannst du Schritte einblenden oder eine Menschenmenge einblenden. Solche Sachen. Geil. Ähm, ja, es ist gut, es läuft halt leider nur online. Und die Musik von den fertigen Musikplätten, die er hat, die ist tatsächlich CC-lizenziert. Die kannst du auch runterladen. Aber dieses Ding, wo du dir quasi aus 20 verschiedenen Sachen was zusammenklicken kannst, das ist leider nicht frei. Und deshalb kann ich sowas hätte ich nämlich gerne offline. Das ist so eine Scheiße. Ich hatte vor ungefähr 3 Jahren hatte ich eine tolle Idee, was ich mit meinem Service machen basteln könnte für Rollenspieler. Und diese Woche habe ich erfahren, dass es exakt das, was ich machen wollte, gibt. Und die haben auch vor circa 3 Jahren angefangen damit. Und die verdienen jetzt Geld damit. Also reich werden sie wahrscheinlich nicht, aber die Server sind zumindest finanziert, nehme ich an. Nein, ich kannte das tatsächlich vorher nicht. Ja, wenn ich es jetzt machen würde, dann wäre es wahrscheinlich so. Auch wenn es nicht wahr ist. Ich hätte es mir gleich eintragen müssen, weil ich patentieren lassen sollen. Dann könnte ich jetzt den verklagen. Oder zumindest Lizenzgebühren fordern. Ich bin jetzt bereit.
Good morning. We are starting with the first part today, with the first panel. And I'm glad to say that we have Enno Lenze here. And he would give us some information about ISIS war in Kurdistan. Say hello to Enno.
So, good morning. Last year I was here and was talking about the same subject, the war against IS in Kurdistan, Iraq. So when I'm referring to Kurdistan in my talks, I usually mean the Iraqi part of Kurdistan, that means the North Iraq or the autonomous region of Kurdistan. If I mean different parts, I will say it. So what I will tell you today will be just a brief overview of what changed within the last year and what will change within the next month, year, maybe, we don't know. And when I finished my talk, we will have Kawa Prüfer here, who's a Peshmerga who fought south of Kirkuk and in direction Baghdad. And I will talk with him about his experience in fighting IS. So, yeah, about me. Usually I'm a businessman. I have had friends in Kurdistan and still have. That's why I got there in the first place about 6 years ago. I came back and yeah, for whatever reasons I started spending my holidays somewhere in crisis areas or war zones, mostly in North Iraq meanwhile. And yeah, that's a very short story what I'm doing there. So if you want to contact me, you have my Twitter name and my homepage. So let's get started. What do you know about Kurdistan, Iraq? Usually when I'm talking with people about this, people just don't know anything. They know there are somehow these Kurds who live somewhere in Turkey and bombing everybody and selling drugs, and basically that's the story about the Kurds in Europe. It's much more complicated. And of course, usually you don't find too much information about the details in the European or in the German newspapers. From time to time, there are some headlines. And then you know we were sending weapons to the Kurds, and there are some different kinds of Kurds, and sometimes they fight against Turkey or with Turkey, but usually people don't care, and they read in their regular newspaper like one story a year or a month, and that's it. The big problem with all kinds of information channels, of course, is you have to trust the author. Also, when you're reading Wikipedia articles about it, you will find some interesting pictures I made, but with completely wrong descriptions, like a tank I was photographing, a Peshmerga tank I was photographing in Kirkuk is on Wikipedia as a tank of the Iraqi army in a battle of Baghdad and stuff like that. So, all problem, you have to know who to trust. And that's a very big problem. Sorry. So, the problem is, when journalists are going to Kurdistan, often they only have a very short period to spend there. I met a lot of people, like maybe 20, who had like 2 days to cover the ISIS war and haven't heard about it before. And so they are flying to like Erbil, the capital of North Iraq, and then they spend like 1 or 2 days in one hotel, and they are sent one day to Duhok, which is a city with a lot of refugees, and then they have a refugee and they talk to him, and that's the story. Problem is, even very big newspapers read all over the world did it the way. I met one journalist who didn't even have a flag vest or a helmet with him, no press card, didn't contact authorities before, and yeah, didn't even have a business card, so nobody believed that he was a journalist. And he had exactly 30 hours to make the full story about ISIS war and financing and everything. And in a very popular big newspaper, he got 2 pages for his story. So I don't know how he managed to write all this, because he haven't seen anything. And so a lot of them spend some days in Erbil or in Duhok, and some even get to Sulaymaniyah, which is a bit more away, but only a few really go to the front lines. And when I'm talking to them, it's always easy. When I ask them, where have you been? They are the ones who can tell you exactly where they have been, who they have met, and so on. And that's the one who actually saw something. And then there are the others who say, oh, I can't tell you, it's my business secret, and so on. that were the one whose business secret is that, yeah, I was in a hotel and I haven't seen anything. So the problem is, if you're reading an article like this, usually I think you don't know if it's a good one or not. And there were two really big headlines this year, but also in the years before, the same headline. It's repeating itself, and I will tell you a little bit about that. Maybe you read the stories that the Peshmerga were demolishing the homes of the Arabs. The story came up last year in January, last year in July, and this year in January, again and again, from different organizations, but always there was only one person on site, and it was always the same person telling the same story again and again. The next problem is, well, I visited the areas mentioned in the reports, and 2 times I was there when the reports were published. Last year in January, they said it was in the Nineveh province, that's like south of Turkey and east of Syria, the area. And they told me, okay, they blown up the houses there and so on. And I was there, and there were just no houses left, because it was an area which was basically Iraq. Then the ISIS came and bombed everything. Then the Peshmerga captured it and bombed it again, and so there was nearly nothing left. And on a 2-hour road trip, we met I think 4 people living there in tents. And so there were no homes at all. And we were asking them if they bombed away their own houses, or how it came that this story is so popular. And they said, yeah, they read it. And of course, they bombed some of the houses in the war. And then they bombed all of them which were booby-trapped, but Kurdish and Arab houses, because nobody liked to live in a booby-trapped house. Next thing is that you don't have the really nice and shiny bomb suits you know from the American movies or something. When they are going to work, the bomb disposal teams, they have 2 little tools, and that's it. So usually it's much more safe to just shoot a grenade into the house and wait till it explodes than try to defuse a bomb. Next time, the exact same story happened in Dakuk, south of Kirkuk. And that was, again, when I was there. So I was driving to the exact villages mentioned there and met the Arab people living there and asked them, have your houses been blown away yesterday? And they said, no, still here. So I asked, do you have any problems with your neighbors here? No. I asked them, do you know that there is a story that your bombs are blown away? They said, no, we don't know it. But then a 70-year-old Arab guy told me that I have to check the sources I read on the internet because it's really problematic there. And so I ended up with a 70-year-old guy somewhere in the desert telling me how to use internet sources. Well, a little bit embarrassing. So sometimes also in some of the reports, even the Arab tribe said the report is false. And last thing, the sources, sometimes that were satellite images which shown houses and later no houses. And the Peshmerga said, yes, of course, we demolished them, all of them, but also the Kurdish houses. And you can't see on a satellite picture if it's a Kurdish house or an Arab house. And sometimes the sources were the Iraqi police. And I don't think that the Iraqi police is a proper source if you're asking about Peshmerga, because they hate each other. Next thing is, usually, there are no Peshmerga and Iraqi police in the same place, because since about 2 years, there is a big strip of ISIS between them. So I don't know where you will meet Iraqi police and Peshmerga in the same village. Next thing, that's how it looks like when one of these booby traps is going off. You can imagine you won't be in there. The man who was filming this is Kava. So he can tell you a lot about how it is being next to booby trap houses and why it's much more safe to just throw a grenade in it. So, next big story, just a few weeks ago, Peshmerga are selling German army weapons. It's a nice story because everybody's reading it. And specifically, they said they are selling the weapons the German army delivered in the last years. And they were also trying to sell, it was a bit confusing, the G36 assault rifles. First thing is, it was German state media, and usually you trust your state media, at least in Germany. We're not in Russia or Iran. Usually the state media is good in Germany. Mostly. In the original report, there was no evidence that any Peshmerga sold any weapon, even it was a headline. In the original report, they say that on some black market, they found a rifle which should be owned by the Peshmerga, but they don't know who want to sell it. They didn't know if it was a Peshmerga or not. So even the headline was wrong. But of course, it's better selling that way. Next thing is, there was a secret black market next to Erbil they just found and uncovered and whatever, and it's just a licensed firearm dealer everybody in the city knows, because only if you have a proper permission you can enter it. You have to be a registered licensed firearm dealer to sell there, and so on. And there is police guarding the entrance. So it's not really secret, not really a black market. Usually soldiers go there to get some equipment. So also it's not 100% certain that the pictures they made were made there, because they have detailed pictures of the serial numbers of the gun, and they have overview pictures of the market, but they don't have the picture with the gun in the market. But let's say they found this particular weapon there. Then we have a German army rifle in a licensed firearm dealer store or market. Next thing is, Germany gave away a lot of these G3 rifles, hundreds of thousands, and some 10,000s to Turkey. And often some of the weapons of the Turkish army somehow ended up in North Iraq. So it could also be that it's one of them. We don't know, because the Bundeswehr, the German army, didn't want to tell me if they have this serial number, if they checked it. Also, when I was there, I found a lot of weapons, German weapons from Iran. I don't know how they came there, and nobody wanted to tell me, but you see a lot of G3s are all over the world. So in this case, I talked to all the people I know. I talked to the chief of staff of the Peshmerga, and he said, well, he has read it in the newspaper, but they never contacted him to ask him about it. Then at Deutsche Welle, the governor of Kirkuk, Najmuddin Karim, was quoted, and that he told Deutsche Welle that Peshmerga are selling these weapons because they don't get their money. And when I talked to him, he said, no, I never talked to them. I don't know what they're talking about. I don't know who to trust, but it was an official interview I did with him, and he said, no, he never said that to Deutsche Welle. So next thing was, of course, the Peshmerga don't get their money within the last month, but it's not the responsibility of the Kurdish regional government, because the Peshmerga are part of the Iraqi army, and so the Iraqi government in Baghdad has to pay them, and they are not selling the salaries. And then I talked to the Bundeswehr, to the German army. They said, okay, they know about the reports. They have no evidence that any Peshmerga sold any weapon anywhere. And they have one serial number of one G3 rifle, which the media team gave to them. So we're talking about one, maybe by a Peshmerga sold rifle out of about 20,000 G3 and about 50,000 weapons in total. So I think that doesn't make a big headline. Just to compare to the American losses of weapons, America is still looking for 190,000 assault rifles. In Iraq only, they lost. So I think one G3 isn't a big thing. So, question from someone before we started here. Is there a front line, and how does it look like? This is roughly the front line. Of course, I don't have the exact figures, but that's about how it must look like now. The blue area is, let's say, the former Kurdistan, Iraq region, the autonomous region of Kurdistan. And the green area is everything the Peshmerga are covering right now. That's about 10,000 square kilometers. And so you can see, obviously, they got Kirkuk, which is a very important city. And they are on the borders of Mosul, but since 2 years now. Special case Mosul. Mosul is more or less an Arab city, and the Peshmerga usually just don't want to take Mosul because it's an Arab city and you don't want to conquer a city you don't want to have. Makes no sense. So they're covering everything around. At the bottom, you can see Baghdad, and that's one important thing. In the past, when you came from Erbil, which is here, and you wanted to travel to Baghdad, most of the way was in Iraqi territory. As you can see now, most of the way is in Turkish territory. And the red line is more or less the front line. But that's the important thing. The people there are not referring to the front line anymore. They're referring to the border when they're talking about it, because there are border posts and border controls, and you have to get a different visa for Iraq and for Kurdistan and so on. And so you can see between the red line and Baghdad is mostly ISIS. And the Iraqi army is in power in about 1/3 of the Iraq at the moment. So it's really a really bad situation still. So, who is fighting ISIS? Another interesting thing. Of course, the Peshmerga, the Kurdish army, part of the Iraqi army, is fighting them. Somehow, the Iraqi army is fighting them, and we always say, keep trying, guys. Someday you will make it, and will be something like a real army. Because at the moment, they have a lack of about 80% of their personnel who just ran away and disappeared. And the people who are still in service are more or less around Baghdad and try to keep it safe. And now they're starting building a wall bigger than the Berlin Wall to keep Baghdad safe. And they say it's not because of security reasons or because we are out of control. It's just, we tell you later. But according to an interview with the defense minister of Iraq, the Iraqi army, which was like imploding 1.5 years ago, he said within the next 6 months now, 6 to 18 months, they will be in service again, because at that time he said they will need 2 to 3 years to have a working army again, which is okay when the war is going on. Then you have the Shia militias, which are legally allowed to operate in Iraq when they have some kind of registration, and they even get weapons from the Iraqi government or the Iraqi army officially. But somehow it's, there are a lot of Iranian looking and speaking people within these militias, but it's like the same sort of thing like in the Ukraine, where you don't have any Russian soldiers, as we know. It's just people who look like Russian soldiers. And here it's that there is no Iranian army in Iraq. It's just people who look like a copy of the Iranian army, of course. And also the airplanes are something different. So then, of course, you have small amount of special forces from the UK, US, Canada and Australia. Usually they arrive in a bunch and leave in a bunch. You know, they work together a lot since long time. And as far as I know, it's like 100 to 200 per country. So not too many, but really well-trained special forces who do the really dirty jobs and help a lot when you have to shoot on long distances or have to figure out where to have the air raids and stuff like that. Then, big surprise, the Turkish army, but it's not really a big surprise. They're there since about 2 years and supplying weapons and trainings and ammunition to the Peshmerga. But I think last year German media noticed it. And then it was a big thing. And you said, okay, yeah, congratulations, 2014 calls, they want the headlines back. But in fact, they're there since a long time and working together. Then, who's training them? All of them above. Also, German trainers are there, and also Russian trainers in the Iraqi army. And so you have like the Kurdish part of Iraq is more, let's say, dedicated to the US, while the Iraqi government was more friends to the US, and now it seems that it will change to Russia, but it's on the edge at the moment. And then you have contractors from all over the world, as I think, but the only one I actually met were from US and Germany, so I heard that there are a lot from all other countries, but I can be sure about German contractors fighting at the front lines and US contractors. And you have YPG and PKK close to the, let's say, close to the Syrian border and at some points of the front lines. but usually in smaller groups and somehow embedded in other groups. So who's fighting the ISIS from above? Of course, again, US, UK, Canada, Australia. Also Belgium, the Netherlands, France, and Denmark, but they do breaks. They sent home all the airplanes for repairs and so on, and the personnel, and then they came back. And the airplane there, sorry for the really bad picture, but it took me a bit by surprise. I was at Erbil International Airport, which is a civilian airport, a normal airport there, and there was hell of a noise, and 2 F-16 were landing just in front of us, which is a little bit surprising because the Kurdish government doesn't have any fighter jets. The Iraqi army is not allowed to operate there, and other armies usually shouldn't be there with their fighter planes. So I had to manage to get out my camera off my bag, and the F-16s were already gone, but this smaller airplane arrived just behind them. And the interesting thing is, it's not exactly on the landing strip. It's next to it on the parking position. So this airplane and the fighter jets were landing next to the regular airstrip that the normal passenger planes could still land there while they're doing their military operations. And when you're starting in Erbil these days, the airplane is going up to about 6 or 7 kilometers and then starting to fly away and back the same way. Because the lower airspace is used for military actions, also for the Russians when they are transferring airplanes and so on. And I asked Lufthansa about it, how the communication works, but they didn't want to talk about it. But obviously the pilot there have to know that they have to keep the height, and they have to know that they should not worry if some fighter jets are passing by. But it was interesting. And so I sent this picture to my really big research team, which is called Twitter, and asked, does anybody know this airplane? And one of them said yes. It's a SIGINT airplane of the Americans who won RC-12N, I think. And but he said, usually it should be accompanied by fighter planes. Said yes, right. And the interesting thing was, we also get like the license number of this airplane, and it should be in Afghanistan right now. But obviously it ended up somehow in Kurdistan. So that means, let's say for me it's okay that they are doing it because they have to land somewhere and it's just cheaper and closer, but it's still interesting how everything develops there. So, what's next? The next big thing there will be Mosul. Roughly 1.5 years ago, ISIS captured Mosul, and the Iraqi army really just ran away, nothing else. I was there like 1 week later, and there was still the body armor laying around and weapons and all of the bulletproof and mine-proof cars and so on. And I just don't have a good reason why you run away from your enemy and you get rid of your body armor and rid of your weapons and rid of your mine-proof cars and just run away. But I think someday we will know what happened exactly. But it was not like one West or like one car, it was like 200-300 cars and a few hundred Wests. So, as I told you before, the Peshmerga or the Kurdish people are not really interested in Mosul because it's an Arab city, but because a lot of ISIS people are in there and like taking the city as hostage, they have to take the city. The Iraqi army should do the job, but they're just not there. And you can't just bomb away everything. I often have long discussions with people here if there should be fighter planes bombing or not. But you shouldn't mix up Syria and Kurdistan, Iraq. It's a different story. In Kurdistan, Iraq, the Peshmerga have to give the command if something should be bombed or not, or like they can request it, but they're in charge of it somehow. So usually they say, we don't do any air raids if we're not 100% sure that there are no casualties. That means that it goes very slow. Like when they want to retake Shingal, it was like 6 months in preparations with cutting off the supply lines and sending in special forces and sniper teams and so on. And they did the air raids around the city to cut the supply lines, but not in the city. And the same thing with Mosul. They won't end up with a city like Aleppo or like Kobani or something. So what they do, they cut off the supply lines and then they just wait. And then either you could do just a big air raid and Mosul would be like a parking lot, or you can do the house fighting, which is a really tough and ugly job. I once accompanied a special forces team who wanted to enter houses to fight, but I stayed outside in some distance and was just filming it. And it's really, they had one of my small cameras and one of the rifles, and it's just the worst thing you can imagine, because you never know if you're shooting a friend or not. And maybe the house is booby-trapped. So a big city like Mosul, with more than 1 million inhabitants, you can imagine it's not easy to take. If we go back to the Second World War in Germany, Berlin, of course it was bigger, but it took the Russian army about 14 days, and on both sides 200,000 people were killed. So you won't have this in Mosul, so big problem. So now there are a lot of people training them. Mostly Germans. The picture you see here, they set up small houses. It's a training facility the German army built. The guy in the middle is a German army trainer. And it's like 10 houses, and they are just learning how to do proper house fights. And then, of course, the Peshmerga said, we won't die alone, please send us help. And so they allowed the Iraqi army to enter Kurdish area, which is usually prohibited by the constitution. And so 4,500 soldiers are now around Mahmur, which is at a river crossing that you can go to Mosul from the south. There are also more and more Turkish soldiers. I'm not sure about that. I heard something about 1,000 or maybe 2,000. I think they won't send too many Turkish troops, but they will send some kind of special forces or specialized teams to support them and to train them. And then you have some contractors. Nobody wanted to tell me how many, but usually you don't want to tell anybody how many contractors you have, because they don't have to count the bodies later, because you just pay you, I think, 100,000 death toll, and then it's okay. But usually the contractors are former special forces who do the really dirty job at the beginning, and then you send like the Iraqi army so they can run away and are not in your way anymore, and then you send the real troops, and then you try to get the city. They are thinking about taking Mosul since more than 1 year now. And now they gather together everybody, but it's still not sure when it will happen. But I think somewhere in the next weeks or months, because they are already bombing everything south and west of Mosul on daily to weekly basis to cut off the supply lines. And then you wait usually 4 to 6 weeks or something there, and then they should rout off ammunition. So, and of course, a lot of the training is provided by Germany, and so I always have to say thank you to Angie after I met the Peshmergas. I say, if you see Angela, say her thank you, good weapons, good training. What's next? Referendum, or exactly 2 of them. So, the Kurdish constitution of Kurdistan of Iraq allows the people to have a referendum about being an independent country. And of course, all the time they wanted to do it or don't want to do it, yada yada. But now they talk to the European Union, they talk to Obama, they talk to the Russians, they talk to Turkey, and it looks really good at the moment. They can live on their own from the oil sales, but they rely on the oil a lot. So they want to start to build up tourism, but at the moment they have some marketing issues with that. And so they have to fix it. But I still can say, even today, you can have a safe trip to Iraqi Kurdistan, no problems, as long as you don't go to the front lines. It's really safe. Some years ago, I've been there with my girlfriend, and it was really no problem having a good time there. So, the army does work, the police does work, the administration does work. So they have basically everything you need to run a country, and they're doing it since more than 10 years now. So it works. And so they want to do two referendums, one for the former Kurdistan region of Iraq, and one that's like the blue area I had before, and one for the green area, the disputed areas. But I think both will vote for independence. The Kurdish people in the former Kurdistan region of Iraq, of course, and the people in the greener area, so in the disputed areas, they have the protection of the Kurdish forces since like 1 to 2 years now, and I think that they don't want to go back to Islamic State, Iraq or something. So I think they will stay in Kurdistan, but that's also a bit of a problem. Like the Shingal Mountains, or Sinjar as we call it in Germany, there live the Yazidi people who usually just want to live on their own. They want to be bothered by anybody, but they now have to decide, do they want to be part of Iraq or part of Kurdistan? And they say usually they don't want to be part of anything. They just want to be let alone and have a nice life. Now they have to decide, and that's problematic because, of course, there are a lot of fights, like politic fights going on, because some want to be part of Iraq, some not. A really big problem. And next thing is south of Kirkuk, there are the Karkai, another minority, religious minority, and they have the same problem. And they say, okay, the Peshmerga gave us protection now, so we will stay in Kurdistan, but usually we just want to be left alone and live our own lives. You will have that in some places. So that means that the referendum could solve like the border, but you will have a lot of different ethnic and religious groups living there who don't like each other too much. And so they have to keep it somehow peaceful, that it doesn't end up like the Iraq did in the last years, but more like we have it in Germany. We don't have that much stress with the different kinds of religions, or maybe in Bavaria it's a bigger thing, but in the rest of Germany it's okay. But I think the problems they can solve it in a political way and not by fights. But it's not that everybody's happy and dancing around if there's a referendum. For some, it's just the better of two bad choices. So basically, that sounds very well. They get support by a lot of nations. They can fight ISIS. They have a referendum, and you could say, yeah, perfect. Just close the file, and at least the Kurdish people are safe in Iraq. But of course, the war is going on. And they haven't taken Mosul yet, they didn't have the referendum, and so on, and they still have a big lack of money since the oil price was dropping so heavily. And at the moment, in this Kurdish part of Iraq, about 7.5 million people are living, and 2.5 million of them are refugees. So you can imagine you have some problems there with financing all these things. So, what's left to do?
What would you say about better equipment?
So, we didn't test this before. There are some Peshmerga fighters, including Kava, who are actually under heavy fire, and Kava's asking them, okay, what do you need? Better equipment? Yes. Better rifles? Yes. Bulletproof vests, maybe? Yes. Night vision? Yes. Some protection? Yes. You see, even the people who are actually fighting there didn't have proper equipment, and that's the thing now. They're on a good way, but they still need a lot of support from all over the world. What I want to do now you've seen the situation. How is it now? What will be the next steps? Now I want to talk to Kava, who was in this video and provided the video of the blast of the building before and so on, and talk with him about his time he spent on the front lines and how it actually is fighting ISIS, because I think all of you read reports and you saw something in the media and so on, but it's still some people far away are fighting some war. Like we have it always. When we get our breakfast, we see, okay, another country is bombed and 1 million is left and so on. So I think you will keep much more in mind this situation when you have seen someone who was fighting there and will go back fighting there, and you can ask him anything. So first I will talk to him a little bit, and whenever there are questions, just raise your hand and ask everything you want to know. Thank you.
Okay, so we make a little bit changing on the floor over there, so we can sit together.
Yeah. To make it a little bit more. So, okay. Hello? Yes. So, if you ever wondered how war actually feels like, Kava just brought us 2 bullets. Just to see the difference, the shiny one missed him and ended up in the sand somehow. And the not so shiny one, you can see where it hit his helmet. So please just pass it around and give it back to us. And if you're interested later, you can find some of the equipment of him here. It's really simple, but you can, when there is a coffee break, just get up to the stairs and get some hands on. You have a so-called plate carrier. It's like a vest where you can put in the actually bulletproof plates. That are the plates here. They are a little bit heavy, but they are AK-47 proof. And so if there is a grenade, it doesn't help. This, in Germany, this is a so-called Eierschoner. You use it like this. And then you have some kind of night vision. And this nice thing to have you, I think Kava is using an AK-47, that you have it with you all the time. Yeah. So, and if you need some fuck ISIS stickers for your car or something, we have some here also. So, now. Du kommst in die Mitte. Wow.
Thank you.
We will make funny noises till it starts.
Okay. Enno, thank you very much.
Of course.
It's every time difficult for me to ask good questions if I know that guys was on the front line. Kava, how you feel under fire?
Well, it's getting normal.
We saw that interesting movie that the house of with the blow of the bobby trap, and how many houses you found with such traps?
Almost every house was booby trapped, and it doesn't matter if it's just 1 or 5 houses, because if you got one house, especially in the middle of the other 4 houses, you can get them all blown up with one explosion. And that's what actually happened in the movie what you saw.
Okay, Enno, our press mostly brings the same stories, and then we find informations where it comes from. About these houses, they are blown up. There are Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, and I guess was another.
Foreign policy. Yeah.
And where does their information come from?
Yeah, that's a big problem. Of course, I have great respect for the work of Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International, because usually if you read something from them, you know it's just the truth. You don't have to double check it or something, because they do really good work. And that was why I was so shocked about it. After I found out that it can't be the full story. And the thing there was that it was from the same person. All 3 reports came from one person. And there were also some, let's say, a lot of questions still open after I read the whole report. And I don't know why they have this problem there, or why I found out the opposite of it when I was actually checking the facts. I just think it's always better to rely on just one source, especially in something like that. And the other thing is, when I was talking to German media, or to not only German, to all the media, I asked them if they double-checked the information, and they said, yes, of course, we have the information from Amnesty and Human Rights Watch. I said, yes, but it's from the same person. So you only have one source. and not like one source, like one group of people, like one source, one person. And that's just too few persons to check. I don't know why it happened, but it's for me it's a very bad thing, because I never expected something like that happened at Human Rights Watch or Amnesty International, but somewhere else.
That's really interesting, because if you got only one person who give the informations, so maybe we have to ask this person anytime if we found her.
Yeah, I can give you the details.
Oh, please. It's also interested for me. Kava, if the people here in Germany think, hey, there's ISIS fighting, the Peshmerga is fighting, some other guys are fighting, how you make the decision if you see a guy, is it a Peshmerga or it's ISIS, or how you can difference them, because mostly they don't work with uniforms. We know them here from the German army.
It's very easy. You're gonna wait until they shoot at you.
And often there's really a big gap between your front lines and their front lines, and you just know if he's facing you, then it must be some ISIS guy.
And then try. Maybe
Yeah.
he shoot or not.
But there was also, I think 1 year ago, a friendly fire where Peshmerga saw some people running around in the dark and they started shooting at them, but they didn't respond the fire, even they were in range. And then they knew something is strange here and stopped shooting, and it was a team of British Special Forces. And yeah, and that was a big problem, because of course British Special Forces don't tell everybody where they are, and the Peshmerga got new night vision, and the Special Forces didn't know it. And so one of the Special Forces was wounded, but nobody was killed. And so they said, okay, they need some kind of communication channel to solve this.
Yeah, you have to say something to this.
Well, when we was providing water in the nighttime with a water tank, our own peoples were shooting at us because they didn't know it was us. Friendly
Yes.
fire happens.
I guess that's a big problem also for the troops over there. How we can tell the difference, our people here at the homes, at their fine devices where they sit and look on informations on the television, that the good guys are the Peshmerga and the bad guys must be the ISIS, or are Peshmerga maybe some look like the ISIS, or how we can tell them the difference?
Yeah, from my point of view, it's very simple. When I asked the Peshmerga ministry to join the troops, they said, okay, we will provide safety and transport. I think if I ask the ISIS, it will end up somehow different. So that's that's the one point. And at the other end, the people are fleeing from ISIS area to Kurdish area, not in the other direction. It must have a reason. And usually, if you don't go to church or to synagogue or to whatever you like in Kurdistan, maybe your mother is shouting at you, but that's it. And also in ISIS area, it ends up a little bit different. So I think if you met people who have been in like Kurdistan, Iraq, and Erbil and say, yeah, I had a bad time, I drank too much in the nightclub and now I have a headache, and the other one said, yeah, I was awake too long in ISIS area and they put a bullet in my head and now I have a headache, then you know the difference. So I think from my point of view, it's really simple.
Yeah, of course, believe that. Okay. So I think maybe we start with a little part of questions of the auditory, if you want.
You're awake?
And we now have to look for the microphone that works.
Yes, I read in Wikipedia, you know, there was this nice picture that showed the setup of the parliament of the autonomous region, yes. And there were some places were marked as that they are for minorities or something. And when you told us about the referendums, I wondered if that wouldn't be a possibility for convincing the people, like the those minorities.
And Kakai and
Yeah, saying, okay, when you have when you vote for us, for Kurdistan, then you get a place too in the parliament.
The problem is they already have.
Oh.
The Iraqi parliament, the Kurdish Iraqi parliament has 111 seats, and the 100 so-called Kurdish seats, and 11 for the different minorities. So only 100 are elected in the normal way, and 11 are minority seats, and I think that's roughly 10%. That's really a lot, especially if you see we don't have one minority seat in German parliament. Also, they have a hard quota for women. A third of the parliament and of the public, of the important public employees has to be women. But they not only have the third, they are over-exceeding the quota. It's, I think, 36% at the moment. There is some things that are really interesting. And often I hear from some people that it's not really democratic, but it's like a kingdom of Barzani and so on. But his party only has 34% in the parliament. So I think if you fake elections or something, you would give yourself more than 34% usually, or you're doing a really bad job. And so they have, I think, at the moment 12 or 14 parties in the parliament, but two together are have more than the half of the seats. So it's somehow like in Germany. But they really have also big fights, I mean, really fights sometimes in the parliament. It's different than here. But so I think at least the democratic thing is working there also with the minority seats. And but the thing is, I think for a lot of the people, they say, we don't care about the people in Erbil and we don't care about this parliament and so on. We just want to live in our homes and done. I think so if you can arrange something that they get a part of the taxes and can live like in their own autonomous region, like the Kurds are doing now in Iraq, that might be something what will do the job. But it's also very problematic because I talk to a lot of people. I talk to like Qasim Shesho, the Lion of Shingal, who was start fighting ISIS in the Shingal mountains with only 70 men and so on. And so I know his point of view, but there are living like 1 million Yazidi people, so I don't know all the points of view. And so from the people I know, it can be solved easily, but I don't know the rest of them. And so, but I think after all, they want to have a safe life. Then they say, okay, go to Kurdistan, have a safe life, and solve the details later.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, Enno.
Hi.
Question: what's cost your trips for security when you go to Erbil, and you make a great job for all people. You give a lot professional information from the problems in the war zone, and that is very, very good. And
Thank you very much. So my trips, let's say at first you need the equipment like the really big bulletproof vest, not the small one. So it costs about, I have an old model, it cost about 3,000 euro. You can get some for 600, 700 now. Especially because my vest was somehow missed in action now, and I have to buy a new one. I will take
one for you.
I will take the cheaper model now. And then you need the camera and so on. So that's like the fixed cost you have before, and even the helmet cost like 500 euro, and the combat first aid kit and the trainings and so on. But that's like, with the camera and so on, I think something like 12, 15,000 euro you have to pay once. And the trip is like the flight between 500 and 1,000 euro. And then it really depends. Sometimes I'm staying in Erbil for a few days and taking a hotel, and they are, let's say, the same prices like in Munich. You can end up at like 4,000 euro for a suite or something, and you can have something for like $10, which is like a $10 hotel. So the good thing is that I don't really have to pay for the protection. Usually, if you have a really good professional protection team like Dynacorp is providing something there, I think you pay like about $10,000 a day for a security team with a car, or usually with 2 cars and a paramedic and so on. when I'm there, I'm usually guest of the Peshmerga ministry, and they just take me with them, and I can just join them somewhere in Erbil when they go to the front lines, and then they pass me to other teams and to other teams till I'm at the point where I want to go, and then they bring me back, and because I'm with them all the time, they provide all the security needed, so at least I don't have to pay anything for that.
Yes, hello. One more time, thank you for to you both coming here reporting. A short question. You were talking about who is fighting IS, about contractors from US and Germany. Who is a contractor from Germany?
Well, they don't talk too much, but how it started, it was funny because someone asked me, where are you from? And I said, I'm from Germany. She said, oh, I thought you were fighting there. And that's how the story started. And I said, yes, bring me to the other Germans. It was, that were people who were former German army soldiers or trainers who then are now on the private market, and some of them working for US companies, or most of them, because the private military market in Germany is a bit difficult. In US it's easier, and some consultants are from level 3 and some are from Dynacorp, and let's say the regular ones you will find, XI or Blackwater, how it's called, is banned in Kurdistan, so you won't find them. They started a gunfire with some Kurdish politicians because they didn't realize that they were important politicians, and since that they are banned. And so, but usually people who were some kind of special forces or trainers in the Bundeswehr before, and who now on the private market. But let's say, I think maybe 40, 50, something like that. So no, not too big numbers.
Cover?
I don't agree with you, sorry. There's 2 to 3 companies from Germany. They got the company over here. They train in the United States, in Carolina. And they got German and American contractors. So I saw in Darkhawk like 25 volunteers, Canadians, French, Germans, United States, Mexican.
But I think there was only one Mexican, but everybody knew him. So,
He was with me.
Hello, Jan. I have a question for Kava. So I would like to know, how have you become soldier? If you have been just a regular guy and you have to pick up a gun, or just what the story? And maybe Anna, for you, if you can tell something about the Syria, because the things are much more complicated over there. And you haven't been there, I guess. So if you can just at least say something about the relation between the Iraqi Kurdistan and the Kurds which are in that area, because it's very interesting. Thank you.
My mother, she was before me fighting against Saddam Hussein and his regime. She started to fight when she was 14, so it's in our family. I got, in the last 2 years, I got like 70 peoples. They got killed from my family, friends, and everybody around. And that's the way you're gonna think about it. If there are kids, women, older peoples, they're just getting killed for nothing, just because somebody wanna have his own property or territory. I think it's regular to stand up and take a weapon in your hand and go fight. Not everybody can do that. It's also not the best way to do it, but at least it is the way I can do it.
So, yeah, let's say legally I've entered Syria twice, but only, let's say, at the edge, so it doesn't really count, and it was by accident because there's no border left, at least at some points. So the relation between the Kurds in the autonomous region of Kurdistan and in Syrian Kurdistan, which is called Rojava, it's a bit complicated. In Rojava, usually the YPG, the YPG is fighting, which is some kind of a sister organization of the PKK, which makes it difficult for a lot of countries to work with them. Even they came from the same place somehow, but it's just not the same group. And the YPG is very popular for the fight of Kobani. And usually Peshmerga and YPG are not fighting together. They respect each other. If you read it on the internet, you will have a really different picture, but usually the people who are writing the stuff on the internet have never been there. So they are just yelling at each other like pirates and CDU or something. And but in the area where they are next to each other, usually when there is YPG, the Peshmerga said, okay, hello friends, we don't have to go any further, and vice versa. But they don't share too much in common. They are friendly to each other, but like they don't share ammunition, no weapons, water and food maybe, if needed, but not too much. But if there's ISIS around, immediately they start fighting together and everything, and are happy about it, and then they say, okay, have a nice day, see you next time. So when I was there and talking to the people, everybody spoke about the other with greatest respect and said there's strong fighters and good ones and everything. But it's a problem, or what's not a problem, it's just a different ideology. Like, to make it really simple, but it's much more complicated. But to make it simple, the YPG are some kind of communists or Marxists. I can't really tell you in detail because I don't properly understand it, while the while the Peshmerga are capitalists. So it's really the really short version. So, but of course, we know it from German history, it doesn't work together very well. But it's much better than in German history. They respect each other, but they don't want to share too much. So, when there was a fight of Kobani, and it looked really bad, then the Peshmerga minister and the president of the Kurdish area negotiated with Erdogan that they could send Peshmerga troops over Turkish area to support the Kurds in Kobani, which was a really great deal because Erdogan has to agree that a sister organization of the PKK gets support with weapons of Germany, which is a really huge deal. But somehow they managed to do it because Erdogan also knew he don't want to have ISIS on his borderlines, at least if they don't carry oil. And so they managed to send 300 Peshmerga with the Milans and with the G36 and so on. They were counted at the border and they have to make like list when they shot the Milan and so on, but at the end it worked. So you see, if it's necessary, they work together, and they explain it to me like they are brothers. And of course, brothers fight each other all the time, but if you have some neighbor annoying you, you can work together against the neighbor. And I think that describes it somehow.
Okay. Hello? Okay. First of all, thanks for the information you provided us, guys. Really cool. I have a question. Are there some prisoners of war from ISIS? Like, have you met them, or how are they, and stuff like that?
Well, I think not too many are captured, to say it that way. Or if they're captured, usually not in one piece. It's really the sad story. So there are really rare cases where somebody was captured and questioned, at the end they gave information, but I think like maybe a few dozen or something, not very much. Really rare cases. And I met one of the guys who's working a lot behind enemy lines, and he was really the scariest guy I've ever met in my life. Everything from him. And he said he could bring me some ISIS people, but not in one piece, and I have to count them on my own. And so I said, thank you, I was just interested to talk to someone really. So I only know the video coverage of some of the questionings when they ask, how did you join ISIS and why are you fighting and so on. And at least some of the guys they captured were really poor guys who just said, okay, they said if I don't fight, they kill me and my family and everything. And if I don't fight in a proper way, they will also kill my family. So at least some of them didn't have a real choice, and often the ones at the front lines are the ones who were somehow forced, at least that I see it. And they were really happy when they were captured and start talking all over with no torture or something. They just talked and talked and talked and said everything because they hoped that the information will help to get their families out. And so that's also a big problem because in the Kurdish media, this was broadcasted widely. And so when you're a Peshmerga, you know you may be shooting just a poor guy who wants to save his family, but on the other end, he's your enemy. So what to do? It's a very messed up situation. While behind them, you have like the real ISIS, you just want to kill or something. And I think that's also one part of the story which makes it really complicated.
Another more questions? Hinter dir.
Yeah. Hello, Enno. The other question, perhaps is often discussed, how scary or brutal are the ISIS soldiers. We discussed some earlier about this question. I think a lot of this is only propaganda. What do you think?
No, it's not.
It's a close friend of mine is a Peshmerga commander who was in Sumar and when they crossed the Mosul Dam and so on. And so the important thing is I know him since years and we're close friends and I really trust him, and I got some really bad pictures like people cut in pieces, obviously brutally raped before, and I think the age somewhere in the teens. So really bad stuff. Also, of course, they behead people, they burn them, everything, they torture them. Sometimes there's even contact to some in Raqqa or somewhere where they have sex slaves, and they send messages to the parents or something because they find them on Facebook or something like that, and just send them really bad pictures and everything. So they are horribly brutal. So really, and they don't take care about Geneva Conventions or anything. And I think that's the next thing. We talked about it. We compared Taliban and ISIS, and like Taliban is really a different story because at least they didn't shoot the medical helicopters down or something like that. And there were, let's say, some basic rules of engagement. While ISIS even shot at us when we had the press west and were far away from the army and stuff like that. And send suicide bombers to our press convoy and stuff like that. So I think it's really a different story, and they are incredibly brutal. So really, I know especially in German, you shouldn't do this comparison too often, but they are really somehow like the Nazi regime here. They just want to kill everybody in whatever way, and we can just be happy that they don't have the possibilities to build up big factories to kill people faster, because they would do it.
One question I have also. We here have mostly very important and very dramatic discussions about rights of female and gendering and stuff like this. And I guess the Peshmerga have female soldiers, I remember. We don't have information about the ISIS about female soldiers. I don't think so, they have some. But what happened if Peshmerga female soldiers get captured by ISIS?
Everybody got his own resolution. There's no capturing.
Usually, as far as I know, there was no capturing of female Peshmerga soldiers. First is, I know some soldiers who really have the left bullet for their own, that they don't want to get captured and tortured and so on. On the other hand, there are female Peshmerga fighters, but they are not very often at the front lines. Usually, they are like with the media teams or somewhere behind the front lines, but they're not fighting too much. It's when you see Kurdish female fighters, it's mostly the YPG. They have a lot of them, and also the percentage of female fighters in the Peshmerga isn't very high. When the fights were starting in the 70s, like 76, I met 3 women in total who were one of the first Peshmerga female fighters who started then, and they told me that at that time there were maybe a dozen female Peshmerga fighters who were actually fighting. And so I think just the chance isn't very high to get a female Peshmerga fighter because usually you won't have them at that point.
Okay, thank you both for the moment. I think we make now, if you know have more questions, a little break for coffee and for maybe a snack or something like this. And then we met together for a second part of information. And then we will see we have on the top over here that you can speak and get more information over that. Thank you both. Thank you very much. And thank you all. See you later. 12.
Das nervt, wenn sie ständig kalt runterzieht. Ja, manchmal kommt warme Luft, dann kommt wieder kalte Luft. Ja, wir haben jetzt gerade auf voll gedreht. Also Zieltemperatur wären 50 Grad. Ja. Warten wir mal.
start with our next part. So please also listen to Leah Frings and the information she will give us about the actual situation in eastern Turkey and Kurdistan, Iraq. And the microphone is yours.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I'm having a cold, so I hope you're gonna be able to understand me. I'm a freelancing journalist. I travel to Eastern Turkey, mainly in October, November last year, to watch the elections, but also to see what the Kurdish people are doing when they're traveling actually from Turkey to Iraq, and why there are some migrations and refugees going from Turkey actually to Iraq and not in the other way around. So first we're going to talk about the situations of refugees. The situations of refugees in Turkey. I was going to a refugee camp in Diyarbakir, which is mainly a refugee camp for Yazidi people who fled from Shingal when Daesh was invading Shingal. Situations so far from what refugees told me is that Turkey is not a safe place, especially if you're from a religious minority. Because if they want to go to the official camps, like the state camps, the Afad camps, then you have to be like a Muslim. If you're not a Muslim, you will be like, you will not get a lot of help. You will always be the underdog in the camp, and you're still not safe. It's still dangerous. So this is a picture of a refugee camp only for Yazidi people. This camp is mainly made by Doctors Without Borders and the local HDP. You can see the camp. It's basically what we see from refugee camps all over the world, those typical tents. It's a very bad situation because people are kind of stuck in there. They actually can't go back home. I will show you later some pictures which will show you why people cannot even imagine to go back to Shingal. These tents actually, they get really, really hot in the summer. People say that they actually prefer the winter because in the winter they have an oven inside the tent, and at least they can get the tent warm, but they cannot get it cold in summer. So summer seems to be the more difficult season for them. Yeah, so actually we're having a deal now between Europe, Germany and Turkey to give money to the Turkish government to take care of refugees. But actually, if you, as a refugee, belong to a religious minority and you do not go to the official camp, then you will be not getting a refugee status, which means you're excluded from the financial help and from the permission to cross borders. Okay, now they close the borders anyway, but still it is very difficult. So actually we're placing the people in the kind of situation that we force them to either convert to Islam or just stay out of any help, or they're going to be having a lot of trouble in the official camps. I have been talking to a lot of people from Shingal, and I wanted to make this really clear. I'm not going to say like bad things about Peshmerga people or their fightings because there might have been like military decisions that might have really been necessary to leave Shingal in this very moment. And I am not in the position that I can judge about this. But what people from the camp told us, that they pledged the Peshmerga before they left to at least leave them some of the German weapons to defend themselves. And basically what people in the camp told us is that, they just left and they didn't give them any weapons to defend themselves. We all know the story, what happened to the people from Shingal, mainly. Yeah, thousands were murdered. In the camp, many families still miss members of their families, displaced girls. They don't even know if they're dead or if they're somewhere with Daesh as sex slaves. This is a drawing inside of one of the tents. I don't know, do you see this? It's yeah, very obvious. People are kind of trying to deal with everything that they've seen and they've been through. You see the Melek Towers, which is the angel of the Yazidi people. And we met Anta and Madina. They also came from Shingal. They invited us in our tent and told us their story. Yeah, and next thing is I'm going to show you some pictures and things that they showed us, and they took it when they left from Shingal. And those pictures can be really traumatizing. And the next stories, so and kind you have family there or something, you can also just like leave the room. Feel free to. So when he left Shingal, he actually saw his neighbor, and he took a picture just to understand what was happening and to have a proof that this was happening in Shingal, and this was actually what Daesh did to the people, and he showed us those pictures from his beheaded neighbor. This is the guy that I was traveling with who was making the translations for me. We talked to the psychologist of the refugee camp. She also told us some stories. One of the most hard stories we heard in the camp was actually this, that they killed a mother's child and cut off his head to cook a soup out of his brain and forced the mother to eat this soup. And it's like, this is stories that no reasonable person can imagine, but if things like this have happened in a region, just think about if you would go back home, ever, and if you want to live at that place anymore. So these are pictures that the children from the refugee camp are painting about their biggest nightmares. So actually, we have a lot of people, like Muslim people, fleeing from the radicals of Islamism. And those people could be a really big chance to make a new form of, peaceful form of Islam in Germany, in Europe, or somewhere else, reform Islam and make something new. But instead, we're handing them over to the extremists because we forced Turkey to close the border. Now they closed the border to Syria. So what kind of a chance do people have? Instead of just like converting to extremism, there are people already at the Syrian border crying out loud that they're angry about the whole world. What do we think are those people becoming within the next generations if we just leave them alone in this kind of manner and just close the borders and say, well, that's none of our business? Yeah, those are more of the kids of the refugee camps. Those are mainly Yazidi kids. And yeah, we have a special effect on the minorities. For example, the Yazidi people, as I showed you the picture from Shingal, they feel not safe at all in Shingal. Even if Shingal is completely free, they say if it's not going to be Daesh, it's going to be somebody else. Because this has been the 74th massacre in the history of Yazidi people. So actually they cannot forget what happened, and they say they need a safe place where they can stay. And this is not going to be Shingal anymore. On the other side, they do not feel safe in Turkey as well, because due to things in the history, they also know they don't trust the Turkish government and the Turkish people. So actually they're kind of stuck in Turkey in the refugee camps and cannot go forward to Germany or Europe, and they cannot go back home. Sorry. So The escape route is life endangering. I'm still in contact with people from the camp, and it happens now and then that I get the message that some of the refugee boats that sunk, that there are people from the camp already like lost their lives on their way to Germany. Yeah, this is actually Lalish. This is the most holy place of the Yazidi people. It's in Iraq. And we visited this place also to talk to the people there about the future of Yazidi people. There are not many of them left. So basically the big fear is that if Yazidi people flee to all different countries, then this is going to be it for the Yazidi cultures. They're just very simply not going to be existing anymore because there are too few of them. So actually there are just some options, either going completely back to Chingal, which many people right now cannot imagine, or going completely into the diaspora into another country. And the biggest diaspora of the Yazidis is actually right now living in Germany. So yeah, for them, actually most of them already have some members of the family living in Germany. Some already made the way, and many of them are already waiting to come to Germany and live here together with the rest of their family, although they're already missing some members because of Daesh and everything. So this is a picture I got a few weeks ago when the Yazidi people heard about the German-Turkish agreement to close the borders. I don't know if you can see this very clearly, but the people are really crying and don't know what to do. Because for them this means that their families are going to be ripped apart again. And also this means that, yeah, they have no real chance to live in a group as Yazidi people on one ground, unless they can go back to Shingal where they don't feel safe. So we actually have to give them some options. We need safe escape routes, especially for minorities, to Europe or to a safe place. And we need an immediate help program for Yazidi people. That means that we either allow them to come here, so they have a free choice to come here and live here, and maybe in the next generation decide to go back to Shingal or some other place. But also we need to help with monetary aid to rebuild Shingal, and of course to also free the last parts of Shingal. Shingal is not completely free by now, so we need help and give the people the chance to free the rest of Shingal and make it really a safe place from Daesh. So from Lalish, we went to Erbil. So you actually have like people, refugees going from Iraq to Turkey, but because of the situation in Turkey for Kurdish people, you also have Kurdish people fleeing from Turkey to Iraq. And what does that mean? Actually, if you have a look at the picture, you know, you see if you're going on the street, and if you miss the street, you're going to be very easily very close to Mosul, where you certainly don't want to be. And this means, you know, Iraq in some places, like Kurdistan, Iraq, that's what I'm talking about, is a safe place. Erbil is certainly safe, but yeah, if you miss the street or if you do mistakes, this can be the last mistake you do. And Daesh is a reality there, and yeah, so many people leave Iraq, but Kurdish people from Turkey have to go to Iraq because yeah, of the Turkish government. I was meeting a terrorist, a so-called terrorist. He was actually a student from Turkey, and he had to go from Turkey to Iraq. He was sentenced to 6.5 years in prison in Turkey for terrorism. And what he actually did, He was an active student at the university, as many of us who have been at university were politically active. He was prosecuted for celebrating Newroz in Ahmed, which is basically like the New Year's celebration, celebrating New Year's celebration in Elas, taking part of a demonstration in memory of the Halabja massacre, and organizing a demonstration in memory of Robaska massacre. So actually those points make you a terrorist in Turkey. And he was accused of making a bad speech about the country. So he continues to study in Erbil. And I was also meeting the head of the IDP in Erbil. So actually, you think, what does the IDP do in Iraq? But actually, they have an outer place for Kurdish people who have fled to Iraq. And I talked to the head, Shilam Eminoglu, and she said if Erdogan loses the elections, he's going to be sentenced in front of the Human Rights Court in Den Haag. They had a lot of hope at that time that they're going to have the same good elections as the few months before. But as we know, history turned out to be different. So we left Iraq again, Kurdistan, Iraq, to watch the elections in Turkey. And we're going to have a closer look on our NATO allied in Turkey. We went to Cizre. Everybody was in a very good mood. People were thinking that they will write history on this day because the HDP is going to be strong again. And a lot of decisions that the HDP was fighting against would be taken to justice now. This was actually the hope of the people, and everybody was thinking this would happen on this very day. But we went to the polling stations, and there's also a law in Turkey which actually means that civil military police has to keep a 500-meter distance from the polling stations. If you see this tank, they have this tank, they're in the everyday streets, every day on the streets in the Kurdish cities of Turkey. They actually tend to have this shooting thing where they follow you. If you go down the street, they just follow you with this. It's basically just to make the people feel insecure just walking over the street. I was meeting Leyla Emret. She was actually the elected mayor of Cizre, but she was put out of office by Turkish government. It's because of something that they claimed she had said, but she didn't really say it. Like she said that she's going to be, she wants peace, and she's going to be afraid that war is going to come back. And this already was enough for the Turkish government to put her out of her office. I don't know if you see that. There's the bullet holes from 2012 when they were already shooting at the former BDP building. It's basically, it's an ongoing thing in the Kurdish places of Turkey. But it has become really, really, really serious since the last summer, since Erdogan saw that the Kurdish people are not going to longer support the AKP, and that they have started to put curfews on the people for weeks and weeks, and shooting at the people, and snipers were even shooting at kids. So basically, they're like completely terrorized. I have friends who are living downstairs in the cellars of their houses, and I haven't heard from them any message within the last days. Although the curfew is meant to be closed, I still haven't got any message from them. So yeah, this was actually what happened before the elections. And you can think, even if you make free elections, if you put the people under such pressure before elections, well, then you can just think about how free these elections are going to be if you still put the tanks next to the polling stations, so people are really reminded what is going to happen if they do the wrong vote. Well, you don't need to do a lot of more stuff to fake an election. I went through the barricades. They actually opened them later for the elections, so the polling stations could be opened. But those barricades are built by the Kurdish youth, so police can't easily go inside and just like arrest people or take people away or start shooting at the houses. So basically, many people say that they only feel free and safe within those barricades of the so-called free districts. Especially people who are like, which the Turkish government wants to put to justice for terrorism or something. What, as you've seen, happens very easily if you're a student taking part in a demonstration or celebrating Newroz, then you can easily be a terrorist. So, yeah, from the last thing that I've heard about Cesar was ANF stating 66 people dead. Faisal Yildiz, he wrote on his Twitter account a few days ago that 30 people were burned alive in the downside of the houses. But we're still missing like very accurate numbers of Cizre, of Sur, and all those places. It's very hard to get numbers of how many people are dead and how many civilians were killed. So, yeah, you see those tanks again. This is just the entrance of a polling station, and think about if you have to go and vote there, what's your choice could be. Inside of the polling station, they just storm in there. You actually don't see the machine guns right now, but on the other hand, they're carrying machine guns. They're just storming inside the toilet of a polling station and storming out again. And it's just like to make people feel insecure. So we went back after the elections to a guest family to go to the TV screens and watch the end of the elections. And until then, people were actually still in a very good mood that these elections are going to be the same like a few months before, and everybody was really thinking this is going to be a good thing for Kurdish people. But after a while at the TV screens, people saw that HDP was about 9%, and it was not even clear if they're going to be in the parliament anymore. So people in Cizre started to become very, very worried, and you could see in their faces that they were scared that the war is coming back to Cizre, because they knew if the AKP is so strong, nobody will put them to any justice, and they can just freely do whatever they want with the Kurdish citizens. So actually a doctor from Cizre just said, what shall I do? Shall I come as a refugee to Germany? He actually has a very good living there, but of course everybody wants to live in peace. I'm not writing down the names of people. Sometimes I'm writing other names because I have to be very careful to not put the people in danger. So this is why I say gas family, or in case of this terrorist, I changed their name. But who does Turkey fight? They actually claim that they fight terrorists. And our Chancellor Merkel, she said a few days ago that we shouldn't go on asking about Turkey's fight, because Germany has interests and Turkey has interests, and in the interest of our interests, we shouldn't go and ask what Turkey is doing there. But I think we definitely should ask who is fought by Turkey there. Because what does the PKK fight for is a very interesting thing. Also, if you are thinking about if PKK or PYD could be a partner in the fight against Daesh. And I'm not gonna tell the whole story about democratic confederalism here now, but you can get it easily on the internet. It's a small book from Öcalan, which you can get for free. But democratic confederalism is a system that rejects nationalism, capitalism, a capitalist industrialism, and is for democratic autonomy and a social economy. So it's actually, it can be, you don't have to be like a big fan of it, but it could be at least something very inspiring. I must say, under the actual circumstances, although, the talks of people have changed a little bit. People who have been more against nationalism are starting to turn around and say, maybe we do need a national state, maybe we do need a safe state with borders, because from the experiences that they have made in the last month with Turkey, they don't feel safe anymore without its own state. So actually, the mood is changing a lot in the discussions about people, especially because Öcalan is in jail, and cannot say anything or commit anything to the official discussion. So, talking about if the BYD can be a partner in the fight against Daesh, well, the US just made a statement about it. They made it twice, actually. And I think it speaks very clearly. And I think it's a very important thing that we start to recognize that the Kurdish people, in general, need, first of all, a secure and safe place for them to live. And on the second, we have to stop dividing them into the good Kurdish and the bad Kurdish people. We have to recognize them as our partners. So actually, the US is doing the very first steps. 2 days ago, there was the embassy of Rojava opening in Russia. So some countries already said that they're gonna accept a free Kurdistan and an autonomic Kurdistan region. So PKK is considered a terrorist organization in Germany. We have already, like 2 days ago, no, yesterday, there was a big search on a youth center in Germany where they claimed that people were supporting PKK and something. But still, we have in Germany like Salafist organizations, radical Muslim organizations who are on the streets very openly advertising for Daesh and for the fight for Daesh, and they're not going to be touched, yeah? So it's this very weird thing. We have to think who's going to be our partner in the fight against Daesh, and also who's going to be our partner to take care of refugees, because those refugees, they can be a big chance in the development of a country and the development of a new world society, but they can also be a threat if we hand them out to radicals and if we just put them in a situation where they have no other chance than to becoming the next generation of terrorists. So, will Erdogan be the right partner to fight this? You have to think of this. Who's benefiting the most from the actual situation with Daesh and the refugees right now? Who's in the best situation of this? And then just think about if this guy and if Turkey has any interest right now in changing this situation. So we have to very carefully choose our partners, because if we're talking about security, then we have to make sure that we're not going to make the same mistakes over and over again that we did in the last years, in the last wars, where we're now, when I hear people talking about the so-called moderate terrorists, where you actually have already studies from, where you actually have studies from American institutes that those so-called moderate terrorists are actually basically people from al-Nusra, which is nothing more than Al-Qaeda, and they're actually more dangerous already than than Daesh, because actually they make their PR stuff a lot smarter. They're not beheading people like officially in front of cameras. They just seem to be the smart terrorists now, but actually what they want is the very same thing than Daesh. So we have to make sure that we're not going to make the same mistakes again. We have to make sure that we're not supporting the supporters of terrorism, and we have to choose our allies and our partners. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Leah. So I have a little bit work to do here so we can sit and talk with the auditory.
Yes. So you left me your West, huh, to talk to them. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for your information for us. Thanks for the pictures. I felt the most of them are really emotionally and a little bit disturbing. And so the first important question for me in the moment is, what do we have to do here that we can change anything, or that we can make anything better as it is in the moment?
As I said very clearly, we have to be careful that we do not make the same mistakes over and over again. And basically right now, we're supporting terrorist supporters. I went with a car from Turkey to Iraq over the border. And if you go with the car, you can actually see trucks. Like, it's a huge long line for kilometers with trucks, with goods going from Turkey to Iraq. And some journalists also have showed it on camera. You can see it on YouTube everywhere, where they even have the location for the goods stated very clearly on the goods, yeah, and they just write it on it. It's like goods for Mosul. And seriously, if you don't close the border, well, how secure can people be to really fight Daesh? On the other side, we have a lot of different information, for example, now about the fight about Aleppo. But there's this, it's very hard to get the truth actually when you're here in Germany, but you have the members of the PAD fighting there and risking their lives in this fight against Aleppo. Why do they do that? Actually, they want to take care of a place to close the border and to stop goods coming through the border for Daesh. They wouldn't risk their lives if it wouldn't be a military necessarily thing. And if it comes to the refugees, we need safe security routes, especially like if it comes for the Yazidi people. We have chance together with the UN. It already happened for some Syrian people to take people from by airplane as a so-called contingent Flüchtlinge, which means you take a certain number of refugees and you fly them out by airplane, so they don't have to risk their lives. You know who is going to come inside of the country to make sure you check their papers, you don't have any terrorists or something. And it's also easier to distribute the people then over the country to get a new home.
The Yazidi people are not safe in Turkey, you said, and the biggest population of this kind of religious group is here in Germany.
Yes, in the diaspora, the biggest group of Yazidi people are living in Germany. And so actually going close, if you have to leave your country, then where do you want to go? You want to go somewhere where you have at least some friends or some family members or some kind of home, especially if you're from a religious minority which is seriously about to die out. If we're not going to act and not going to help those people, in a few years there's simply not going to be a Yazidi culture existing anymore. So we need to give this religion and this culture a chance to come to a safe place, breathe, to reassemble themselves again, and then maybe within the next generations they can decide to go back to Shingal from a safe place. But for now, people are willing to leave their culture, to leave everything behind. They actually say, I don't care about being Yazidi anymore. I just want a safe place. Because as you've seen, I just took one picture here, what people have seen and been through is much more horrible than you can see in the most wars. Actually, what Daesh is doing to the people is meant to be extraordinary horrible. And they just want to traumatize the people, and this is actually what they achieved. So, we have to give those people a chance to become humans again, to resettle, and maybe from a safe place one day choose that they want to go back home. Because actually, their holy place is in Lalish, and Lalish cannot be transported to Germany. So actually, it's very clear that one day they want to be close to the holy place again.
That holy place is as important as Mecca for
Yes.
Muslim. Mostly of the Muslim people there and of the Daesh, they saw the Yazid like the bad guys because they chose the wrong God. What do you think? Is it possible for them to hold on their religious system without their holy places?
Well, this is a discussion within the Yazidi group of people, and as many Yazidis you ask, you will get as many answers, because Yazidi religion is a big mystery thing. And because the stories of the Yazids were only that they were never written down, so actually they were just transported from one person to the next. And you have people studying about Yazidi culture now, and they're actually trying to start to conservate somehow their culture. But it's not that easy. And so you're gonna have a lot of different answers about that.
So we ask our editors what you want to know, what you want to ask, and what you want to talk about.
Actually, the history of the Yazidis is written down. There's a book existing. It is in England.
Yeah, but nobody can.
But the story is written down. So.
Yeah. Okay. There is a book. There are rumors about a book. Actually, some people say there is a book, and some say they don't. But actually, nobody really has access to this book. So, yeah. Oh, by the way, since you're asking me a question, of course, I want to mention when I was in Lalish, you can see Lalish, the holy place of the Yazidi, for example, is safe right now thanks to the people of Peshmerga who are saving this place. I want to make this very clear that the Peshmerga are doing also a very good job in securing the places. And sometimes when you lost the way, I showed you how easily you get on the road to Mosul. And when you lose a way and you don't know where you are, but you know you're somewhere close to Mosul, then you're going to be goddamn happy to see a Peshmerga fighting next around some corner.
Do we have more questions?
Not so much a question, more amendments. In the first time, we had to difference. There are not only Muslims. They have also two big sects of Muslim. And the problematic part with Al-Nusra, Daesh, and all the other stuff, Muslim Brothers are also a big group, are Sunni Muslims. And the other problem I see, why our people are not safe in Turkey, and that would be the first step. We have to go into it. Maybe after, behind that, we have to discuss if Turkey is a good partner for NATO, or we should kick them out, is that the refugee camps in Turkey are recruitment camps for even Daesh, al-Nusra, and the Free Syrian Army, which is by 95% led by Muslim Brothers, means from Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Ankara. And the Turkish state doesn't do anything against that. So the first step is to build up refugee camps under international authorities, which will stop these recruitment to hold the civil war in Syria burning.
Thank you very much. Absolutely, this is what I mean if I say about religious minorities, and also that we're like handing them out to the radicals. This is what I mean when religious minorities are not safe in refugee camps, because they have to convert to Sunni Islam, and they're, as you said, you have those people advertising for those groups, militant groups, and many people see they don't have any other chance to become like a Sunni Muslim and to convert, and they're starting to radicalize in order to not become a victim again. And if you look at other places of Turkey, after the Paris attacks, we had pictures of autocourses, like after a football match, with the flags of ISIS going through Gaziantep and celebrating the attacks on Paris. So it's just like to show how easily Daesh is accepted in many places of Turkey. You just can go there with an autocorso and nobody is gonna arrest you for that.
Okay, that are, I think, important informations for us all, and we have to think about it, our part, what we can do with the informations. Leah, thank you very much for all work that you have done for us, and to bring this information, these pictures, and also this, mainly the informations about Turkey to us, that we can think about our partner and look a little bit more behind the scenes and behind the things that happen there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, next step we have a little round again, and I hope you also stay with us more, because we have Enno and Kava here, and so I guess maybe that will be a little bit informational more what we are thinking about situations over there. Das geht.
Hallo, hallo. Ja, wunderbar.
Das ist keine Stabhandgranate.
Aber ihr müsst dann sitzen.
Ne, wie nicht? Zu nah dran. Okay. Yeah. What is the best we can talk about at this situation? Enno.
First, because I think I wouldn't contribute to the question and answer area because I know we are talking now. There are two small things I want to add and one question later. First thing is, I think it's not very easy to get by accident to Mosul. I entered Mosul. I think I'm one of the few Germans who was there while big parts of it were under ISIS control. So I crossed the city border and then was in one of the outposts, which was at that moment under control of Peshmerga. So it wasn't very dangerous, but I was there. There were like 4 or 5 checkpoints to get in there and a fortified border post, and I had to do real ID checks with picture check and show special permission of the general and of the governor and so on. So maybe it changed a lot, but I don't think that just by taking the wrong road you can end up in Mosul, even not today. Next thing is you mentioned that when the Peshmerga left the Shingal Mountains, the Yazidi people asked them to leave German weapons there to proper fight. It was just impossible to leave the German weapons there because they were delivered 2 months later. So there were no German weapons at that moment. They could leave there. And I was in Shingal and talked to the Yazidi fighters there who are still there. And they told me that they, of course, get ammunition from Peshmerga who were leaving. That, of course, it's a big problem that like 95% of the Peshmerga were pulled back and left within hours. But yeah, it's a tough military decision, and military decisions are not necessarily moral decisions. And the last thing I was wondering, you said that I think at Zacho control post, the trucks labeled Mosul could easily pass. So that means the Peshmerga just let goods to Mosul pass?
No, I'm talking about the Turkey border. There were no
where?
Peshmerga.
To where?
Turkey to from Turkey to Iraq. It was like right before the Peshmerga. I don't know what the Peshmerga.
Okay, because I don't think that they will.
I'm talking about the Turkey military. I don't know.
But
what Peshmerga do later, or how they distribute the goods later on. I don't know.
No, I know it because I spent a day with the intelligence service at the border post, and so I was with them checking trucks and checking people and so on, or it ended up in nearly 2 days because they forget to pick me up. And so, but at the end, I don't think that they can enter it easily. And of course, even if you get goods labeled as whatever, medical aid, I don't know, through the border, then of course you won't get them into Mosul because they let out everything at Mosul, but they don't let anything in, as far as I know from my last trips.
If it comes to the Peshmerga, for sure, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, but
what I'm
Turkey
talking
and
about
Mosul?
is the Turkish military at the Turkish border to Iraq. So yeah. If it comes to losing the street and going to Mosul, no, of course, thanks to the Peshmerga checkpoints, you're not going to end up in Mosul.
No.
Still, there are some streets which are very small, and you just have like no checkpoint anymore. Just how do you say?
But you got every
Not to Mosul.
Wait.
Okay.
Just a place of earth, a bunch of earth. And you know you're very close, and you know the risk of hijacking around in this area, if you're around Mosul, is still a risk. You cannot accidentally go to Mosul, that's for sure. But still you can be hijacked very easily in this area, and so that's a risk.
Well, you can get hijacked everywhere. That's a risk. Everywhere. That's something you cannot mention. But let me tell you one thing. Even if you take a small road in Kurdistan, Iraq, direction to the enemy, you will see there's a gray zone. It means that when our Peshmergas are pushing 500 meters into the front, they will keep a clear zone from 500 meters and will make a second outpost over there. So maybe for yourself you feel uncomfortable because you see nobody, but when you get into the front line, direct to the front line, you will see again that you get from the front lines, again, a safety zone until to the area where there's ISIS. So it will not be that easy to get into it.
Question, how close is the circle around Mosul really? Must we think it like our controls that we have here? If you said in the moment no one's going inside to the Bayerischer Hof because we have there the Munich Security Conference, nobody can go unchecked inside. And how safe is it to Mosul?
It's, let's say, from the area captured by the Peshmerga, it's really safe because you have, you have this clear field, this gray zone usually, and which is full of lights and sometimes mines from ISIS and so on. And so you just, maybe you could pass it if you're really good, but everybody will notice. So at least you know that you have to find someone now. When you go south and follow the river, then there is Mahmur and the bridge. So often you have the Tigris as a border, and there are like 3 bridges in Mahmur, at Mosul, and then you have the Mosul Dam. And the Mosul Dam is you just can't use it at the moment. The bridge in Mosul actually is ISIS area, and in Mahmur the bridge is more or less demolished or fixed a little bit. But so you have only a few points you have really to check, and then you have to see the water. But in the morning, there's a lot of fog over the water, and ISIS used it a few times to try to get over. But let's say from that direction, it's nearly impossible to get in or out without being seen because it's such a big security risk. The other part, like the other, let's say 1/3 or 40% or something, is at the moment bombed on nearly daily basis to really just make it unusable anymore for any kind of vehicles. And then to the west you have Tal Afar, which is a city which is, it's a village, it's a small village, but pretty important because the road from Raqqa, from like ISIS headquarters to Mosul, just passes there, and that's why Shingal Mountains were also so important because it's the same road. And there you still have a big line of just tanks, which are very rare at the Peshmerga, but it seems like they put all their tanks there just to block this line, so I think you can't get in or out without being seen at least.
What about the situation of the refugees? They're coming from the Yazidi are from Shingal and from the other places over there. Does the Peshmerga in the moment support them or help them?
The refugee camp that where I was is located in Ahmet and Diyarbakir in Turkey. So basically the Peshmerga are not around because it's Turkey. Those refugees, they are all from Shingal in this very camp. And in this case, as you said, it's nothing to blame it on the Peshmerga. Sometimes the military decision is a not moral decision, but it is a decision that has to be made in a war zone. But in this certain case, for those people, the YPG fought their way to make them a safe way to flee to Turkey. So in this case, it has nothing much to do with the Peshmerga. Yeah.
But to answer the question, in Shingal there are some 7,500 Peshmerga deployed within the last, I think, 3 months. And Shingal is a bit problematic. You have the city of Shingal, you have the mountains of Shingal, and you have the province of Shingal. So what I'm talking about is the area about around the city, let's say everything in a few kilometers around. The city is south of the mountains, north of the mountains is safe, and south of the mountains is more or less dangerous. But at the moment, nearly 100% of the city Shingal is safe, but you still have fights south of it on the ISIS areas. And Peshmerga, and that's the thing, a part of the Yazidi fighters are also Peshmerga, so some thousands. So it's also when we talk about Yazidi fighters, they could also be Peshmerga and vice versa. There are also Jewish Peshmergas in that area, or Protestant Peshmergas. So we have all kind of, but mostly of course Muslims. And also some of the helping organizations like or charity organizations are there. Of course, at the beginning there is the Bazani Charity Foundation. They are the first to show up because it's like the public health organization or a charity organization who often are former Peshmerga or something, so the connection is pretty close.
Peoples.
Yeah, and so they're like the first ones who show up, and when the situation is better, then the other ones join in. So it's and let's say the ways of command are pretty simple when everybody knows each other. Some of the charity foundations say, okay, I will just be in the first bunch of Peshmerga and let me see what we can do. So in the last 2 months, they set up medical facilities and start fixing the power and all these kinds of things. So the situation is still very bad, but at least it starts.
And there's something, when I was in Turkey in 2013, I went to Suruc, Ahmed, and Cizre, and a lot of other Kurdish cities. I saw some nice things. There's nothing about religion. Everybody is getting help because the Kurdish peoples they are living in there, they are getting the stuff together on points and bring it to the camps. So if somebody would ask me what to do with the Yazidis, there's no way to handle with them to bring them somewhere else because their religion is in Shafidin. It's in Shingal. That's their home. I cannot feel comfortable somewhere else if I'm not at home.
Well, may I say something to that? There are a lot of discussions about what should happen with the Yazidi people. On the one side, you have Apo Öcalan, who also said the Yazidi people should stay in their place, they should go back home as soon as it's possible, to not kill the culture completely. And of course, if the Yazidi people, even if they have the chance to go completely to another country as a closed society, still this is a big risk for their religion, their culture. But on the other hand, I'm kind of like a little bit, on the other hand, you have those people in the camps who say, I don't care anymore, I just want to be safe. And this is also something what the people say and what the people want for their future, that we have to at least admit that it's their wish and their free will to choose something else for themselves and not to be forced to stand with their life for Yazidi culture if they don't want to. I think it's very important to accept the free will of the people, and they have been through so much, that they should have the choice to either leave to a safer place where they feel safe or to go back and build up Yazidi culture in Shingal or somewhere else again.
It's not just the refugees who are Yazidis, there's also a lot of others, Protestants, Christians, everything else. In the area of Khanakin, there's like 100,000 refugees. There's not a lot of people that know about it, but I went to the camps also over there last year. And it's worse than in other cities or in other areas because they don't get provided help from international organizations. The peoples over there, they told us, me and a friend of mine, he's from Berlin, his name is Sebastian Backhaus, he makes also pictures. They told us, let us go home and die there than to drown over here in the water in the tents.
In the moment, there are two questions I have in my mind mostly. The one is, the Yazidi culture is a little bit strange for our mind, because you can be born as a Yazidi, and you can marry a Yazidi.
No.
If you are Yazidi, then you can marry one. But if you're not, you can't get can't be part of the culture. Because you can't get Yazidi like you can get a Muslim or you can get a Protestant or something like this.
You got it on the point because actually this is also a big problem of dying. Their culture is dying because of these rules also.
Yeah, there are many rules, and Yazidi people are, especially in the diaspora in Germany, are discussing about the hard rules that they have. They have also some things in their own history and stuff where things happened, and the society definitely has to evolve in this thing, and they have to work on it. And actually, Yazidis are just within the last year starting to talk about maybe opening the culture. But no, you cannot convert, of course, and there are also other cultures and religions we have where you cannot convert to. So yeah, it's their very own decision. But if you see, have contact to Yazidi people living in Germany, for example, they already have a very different life. That's maybe a good chance, you know, for the culture to evolve. But on the other side, yeah, it's still a risk that they might lose it completely.
And the second question, maybe you can answer me. As the IS attacked the complete province there, Peshmerga leave, retreat. They did form their forces new and then come back with more power, more people, and with a really brilliant plan to get the Daesh out of there. How long does this need to come back from the Peshmerga troops?
Yeah, the first thing was IS arrived with only a small amount of troops, as it seems, as far as I know. So I talked to some of the people who were actually there as observers at that moment and got footage of it. And it looked like maybe 300 or something, so really not much. But miraculously, somehow, some 10,000 joined them from Shingal and were just in their uniforms and had their flags ready. And so it, yeah, what a coincidence. And it was like, they told me, maybe 10, maybe 15,000, you can't really tell, but a lot, instantly. And while the Yazidi people often helped their neighbors, because always somebody was ruling and was going on the others, often Yazidi people helped them. And so they said, okay, we helped, since generations we helped you, of course you will help us. And they say, yes, just get in my home, and then slaughtered them in some cases. And so that was a problem, that it seemed at the beginning just like a few people. Next thing was, like around there were 1,300 and I think 48 Peshmerga according to the list, so somehow more or less, but around that. And there were some 5,000 in the whole Nineveh area, which is about the size of the Saarland. And just 2 weeks earlier, I talked to General Sheikh Ali, who was in charge of that, and that's why I have very exact figures of that. And I even have the map where they were deployed and so on. And in that moment, he said, okay, you won't die just to die, because that makes no sense, pull back. But it was within hours somehow. And so they pulled back, and they didn't have enough trucks and cars and so on. So it's they could do an evacuation or something. They said at the other side, at least a lot of Yazidi people told them, we won't leave. If we die here, but we won't leave. Even it was a fight you couldn't win. And then the IPG came from Syria and made this corridor. They opened it. And then it took, that was the 3rd of August, and they took back, then 2 months later, the weapons arrived from Germany. Funny story, they arrived in Ukrainian cargo planes they had to rent because our planes weren't big enough and we couldn't fly that long and so on. So Ukrainian private company did it. And then they had to deploy the weapons, and also the Yazidi people were some of the first who got the German weapons, because yesterday I also showed Leah the picture of the Yazidi people receiving the weapons when I was there. And so 3rd of August they pulled back. 2 months later got the weapons, get the idea of how to work with them. And then in December, in the so-called Christmas offensive, so around 25th, 26th, and so on, so about 4 months later, they got it back, and they got roughly 5,000 square kilometers back in 3 days. And so at that moment, that was very important also for the Peshmerga, because they said, okay, we can take the sides of the Saarland in 3 days with 40-year-old German weapons. that means ISIS isn't that strong as we thought before, and that was very important for the moral.
Psychological warfare is very important.
And so 4 months, and then they got this part, but the city of Shingal was still unsafe. And nearly 1 year later, they took it, now a few weeks ago. But that was amazing. At the morning or in the night, I got the text message, so it's starting soon. In the morning, there were the first pictures, and in the evening, they said, okay, we're done. But it was a lot of preparation, and of course, a lot of Americans were there, and there were 17 fighter planes just waiting and hovering and dropping all their bombs.
We had a problem before all that. In the beginnings, we didn't have that much ammunition. So if somebody, he was serving in the army, he knows 3.5 clip is not everything. It's not a lot. 3.5, yes. I got 3.5 full magazines.
That's for those who are not familiar to it, if you have full auto shooting mode, it's 10 seconds of firing, maybe 12.
So we don't use full automatic.
Okay, Leah.
Yeah, I would just add something towards that. What I was telling is something that, of course, Yazidi people told, and it was not especially about German weapons. It is that Yazidi people also said that Peshmerga took weapons from them and just left them without. What is true about this story? I can't really say. It's just what people from Shingal told me. And as in worse situations, you always have different informations from different places. Yeah.
But I think I was actually there and talked to the people who fought on that day. So I talked to Qasim Shesho, who formed the HBS, the First Yazidi Self-Defense Units, and so on. And I trust him because he's the one who started fighting with the Yazidi people. And he was there on that day, he was there before, and he's still there. So I think he knows the full story. I don't know why he should lie about that, especially in public. And he told me that, of course, they could keep their weapons because with which weapons would they start fighting ISIS? They didn't throw stones or something. So, of course, they still had their weapons. The AK-47, meanwhile G36, and they also had some caliber 50 MGs and also some with the old uranium ammunition from the Americans. I also took pictures of that there. So according to them who were there, and I talked personally to them, they got their weapons. And so I just don't think that they lied at me at that point.
Well, as you can see, in war situations, they always have different informations and different people. Which I think also those refugees don't have a reason to lie. But yeah, this is the weird thing about war.
No, I think the guys who were actually fighting, I think they know if they had a gun while they were shooting or not. I trust them because I think they didn't say boo, boo, and hope that it worked. I think they know what they did because they're still alive.
Okay, one problem we have in that moment really is we over here can follow all informations and put them in our mind to think and to look what we think about it. If I follow my heart, so I felt that we have to do more to help over there. That's really necessary on each way. And it's not possible for us to say, hey, that's 4,000 kilometers, no, 3,500
about 4,000,
yep,
yes.
far away from us.
But it's not as far as Tenerife or something like that.
Yeah,
no?
of course, that's the point. It's not so far that we can say that's not our problem.
It's too far for Bundeswehr transport machines, but but that doesn't mean a lot.
If we get the Airbus, all things would be better, of course. One last question from my side. If you look with the eyes of the Daesh, how does they see the Yazidi people?
Well, for them, they're basically not humans. Yeah? For them, you must say, as far as I think Daesh, we have a lot of Daesh recruits from Europe. How can this be? It's been like Muslim people been mistreated for by the Western people and by the European people for years, never been recognized. We're pushing the people towards especially also to the Muslim community. And we have to make very sure that we're not pushing people more and more towards the extremists. We have to be very careful about the so-called moderate terrorists that some people are seriously, I cannot understand, thinking about to work together with al-Nusra, which is basically like Al-Qaeda. How can people even dare to think about working together with al-Nusra? This is more than weird, and basically people are, I don't see how some politicians can over and over repeat the same mistakes again. I think if we go and have a focus on the Kurdish people, for example, to have them as our allies to fight against extremism, that there are people who just are fighting for peace and not for like a religious idea or for extremism. So we should actually, if we're looking for our allies, we should have a look what their reasons are for fighting.
But I think there are also governments working together with Assad, who's also a big murderer and slaughterer. So I think, yeah, if people like Putin feel free to work with Assad and help him killing his people to stay in power, so I don't think it's that far away to negotiate with ISIS. But I don't understand both parts.
Kava, I have. It was a question for me that I give to Leah, and she said for the IS, she think that the Yazidi aren't people, aren't human. The Peshmerga, how does they look to the Yazidi people?
Everybody is my brother.
And also, again, please, there are also Peshmerga and Yazidi people. It's not a difference.
Yeah,
I just built up a female Yazidi Peshmerga group in maybe you know the place, but
yeah, former sex slaves who formed an anti-terrorism unit.
Yeah.
And I think having former Yazidi sex slaves as an anti-terrorism unit against IS is the worst thing that could ever happen to IS.
Sure, they would.
Yep.
If they get them, they don't have fun with that, of course.
Yeah, well, I think that the part of the people who had fun with the other will just change. So
yeah, of course. Okay.
It's of course a very serious thing, actually. If you talk about groups from Peshmerga, also from people fighting, sorry, victims of Daesh, of course. I'm sorry, I have a cold. I mean, people who are fighting against Daesh have been victims of Daesh, and although it is against international law, we have to be very careful if people are convinced or said to make war crimes there. Because basically, you know, what would you do if you fight the people who killed half of your family? What would you do once you stand in front of them? And so we have to be aware of the fact that if somebody comes up with accusations of war crimes, this is a very, very difficult thing where you can never be sure if this has been really a strategic war crime put on a certain party, or if it's just been single people freaking out because of the history.
And I also think war crimes, I think it's a weird thing, because if I capture an IS guy and I slap him in the face, it's illegal. But if I put a bullet in his head, then it's okay, according to the rules of engagement. And so I think it's a bit odd to talk about this whole thing of war crimes, but that's a different story. But I always think it's funny, if you punch him in the face, you're a criminal, but if you just shoot him, it's okay.
Let me tell you one thing to that. If you're losing 70 family members of your own family, and you get one of them, and you know they killed your uncle on Monday, on Thursday your cousin, and every day somebody else.
Does we really want to know what then happens?
Wouldn't you be mad? Wouldn't you do some
This
stuff?
is exactly what I said, yeah. That's exactly what I say.
But still, we don't do it. We try to hold ourselves together. Because if I do the same like them, I'm not better than them.
Exactly, and this is also something that I have heard within the from the Peshmerga and also within the YPG. Things like that are, of course, not wanted. But we have to be sure that, you know, although the leaderships of those military forces do not want and do not accept that, although there are human people fighting, and as you said, you know, if half of your family has been killed by them, then it is something that happens in a war situation, that those victims do freak out.
Just one last thing, because you asked me in the last session what's the difference between ISIS and Peshmerga. There's one important thing I just remembered. When they fought against Saddam, and they told me Saddam and ISIS is basically the same for them in how they treat them. And then, after they recaptured big parts of North Iraq, as far as I know, about 200 Iraqi soldiers were really slaughtered or whatever, but only in 2 or 3 days when there was like chaos, and then they said, okay, you can't do the same thing because it doesn't make us any better. But there were a few really big army outposts with like 3,000-4,000 Saddam soldiers, and they couldn't capture them. So they captured everything surround and said, okay, we cut off the supply lines and just wait. Of course, after some time, they noticed even they have ammunition, the Peshmerga are behind the hills, they're just waiting, and food is going empty. And so they raised the white flag and said, okay, just get us, and were prepared to get slaughtered. And then they were threatened pretty okay. They could get out, they didn't kill them, and even there was, I think, a stepson or a son-in-law of Saddam in one of the things, in one of the outposts, and they allowed all of them to get back to Iraq. And a few of them decided to do it, and they were killed by their own people on the Iraqi border. So the rest of them was staying there. There are still villages, like in the, I think, around the Kandil Mountains, where in more or less remote areas there are some just Saddam soldier villages, because they say we don't want to have them as our neighbors, but let them live there and die in peace because we're better. And I think that was for me, and there are dozens of stories, but that's one of them which where you got the facts and you can prove it and everything. And I think that's an important part, that even if they did so horrible things, you still can somehow forgive them. And I think that's a bit like also in South Africa. You always in history have some points where people said, okay, it was a bad time, but just say it's done. And so I think you can't imagine that with ISIS people. And that's even it's 25 years ago, I think that's a very important point of the history there.
There's, if I may add something towards that, there's also something that Yazidi people told me what happened in Shingal, is that some Muslim neighbors of them, Arabic neighbors, basically just handed them over to Daesh when Daesh came to Shingal. And as we had it in the Second World War, they just put marks outside of the houses, so Daesh knew where Yazidi people were living. So, of course, those Yazidi people say, how can we ever live together in peace with those neighbors again? And we also have to just keep this in mind if we think of a military group afterwards coming to Shingal and freeing Shingal from ISIS, that there are also maybe collaborators with Daesh still there in the place. And what Peshmerga and also YPG are trying to do is make the place safe again, so also Yazidi people can be safe there.
That's also a problem if you know that he was supporting ISIS. I think it's not legally a crime. So what do? If you just kill him, you're a criminal. If you let him live there as a neighbor to those he tried to kill, you can't do that. You can't force him out, because then you're the bad guy again. And I think that's also a very bad situation for whoever is capturing the area again, because how to handle those situations, because you're always a bad guy, whatever you do.
Difficult situation. Okay, so we have a good point now to give back the auditory the chance to ask questions or to say something to us. Please.
I have a question regarding the Daesh or ISIS. Because we talk about them like they are the pure evil, which they are. But in the beginning, the ISIS was basically welcomed by the Sunni tribes, by the people in the cities in the first days. I mean, because a lot of Sunnis perceive it, they are freed from the Shias, militias on the Iraqi side. So now it's quite clear what we are dealing with, but those Sunni people still live in this area. And as you was speaking about it, some of them are forced to support the regime. So what will future bring? So when you can military defeat ISIS, let's say you military defeat it, but you have to create some kind of political solution when you remove the worst from it and make some deal between the tribes, or because you cannot just erase the whole area of all people. So it's not easy question, but
that's basically what we had in 2003. It's more or less the same situation. Saddam was gone, and the new president has to unite Sunni, Shia people, Kurds, the different kind of Kurds, Christians, and so on, and he horribly failed, as we have seen now. So I also think, of course, the ISIS won't be defeated. They will go to Syria and later somewhere to Africa, but now they have like the business running, and 1 year ago I explained how much money they make with like the business they set up, and they're really good in it. So they will just go from one country to the other. But let's say in Iraq, I don't see a proper solution there, because within the last decades it was again and again and again the same story. Some of those groups got in power. They start slaughtering the other ones, they make discriminating laws and so on, and I don't see that this will get any better. It would be the chance of al-Maliki when he got in power to unite the different parts, or to say, okay, more or less autonomous Kurdistan, Sunni and Shia people together and so on. But because it got worse and worse, I don't see that they actually can fix it. And I think Kurdistan Iraq will be independent, and then you end up with the mess, because it won't make it any better. And then I think one solution could be like having some federal states who have a lot of power on the federal level, so that you can choose, I want to live in this, that, or that area, more or less, but I don't think that it will work. So sadly, I just don't see how that should be fixed, let's say, within the next years, because I think it needs like a decade to have peace and forget about it somehow. But, and even if you send troops and something, we had all this the last 10, 15 years, it's just repeating.
Yes, thanks for this information, but you know, this is this old sentence, the first victim of the war is the truth or reliable information, of course. And therefore should be very carefully to handle this. But how we can get out of the situation, I think the question of Kurdistan or the state authorities are more in the future. The first thing is what we are called the negative peace, is to stop the war. And for my opinion, a key role in this there will be Putin. Yes. And of course, it's very bad that we have to deal with criminals, with dictators, with Erdogan. But I think perspective for the Turkey, we cannot throw them out of NATO. When we throw them out of NATO, also, then the situation will be worse and worse. The only thing I hope for Turkey is that Erdogan will go on through a democratic process. Therefore, we have to. Yes,
I think it's possible that Turkey will become ISIS state before they're gonna get the democratic under Erdogan.
I think I said the hope. Yes, you know, the hope dies last. It's very very complicated. But what we can do with Putin, but to stop, only to stop the war, not only to stop the war. What he wants from us, from European Union, from Germany.
Well, may I answer this? For sure, Putin is not the overall good guy, as some people see. And he's also not the overall bad guy. You have to make it very clear, especially if it comes to Germany. From our politics, we have put Russia, we didn't take them seriously for years. So basically we ignored them, we broke our word. We showed them the biggest disrespect with our politics, and we made a lot of stuff that raised the Russian nationalism. Of course, Russian nationalism is not a good thing, and of course, what Putin is doing, either in Ukraine or in Aleppo, is not the best. It's not okay. But it has its sources and it has its origins. And basically with our politics...
Since when is Putin in Aleppo?
Huh?
Since when is Putin in Aleppo?
I'm talking about the bombings, which are within the last days. There are bombings going on. No? What? You have different informations?
It was sounding like they got troops on ground.
No. I'm talking about the bombings, and everybody is talking about the media. I have not heard about him sending troops, actually. It's just about Russian Air Force bombing.
Some 8,000 troops are there.
Okay, something I don't know. I'm talking about the Russian Air Force bombing, and this is what is going around in the German media for the last days. So basically... of course, Putin is not gonna take any care of European interests if Europe is just mistreating Russia in this way, like they did for the last years, you know? For example, just think it from the Russian vision. So we actually let Erdogan slaughter the Kurdish people since months now. They're slaughtering them, they're locking them up in their houses, and we do not say a word, while during the Ukraine crisis, only for rumors, we put up sanctions towards Russia.
I think it was a little bit more than rumors.
Well, it was the MH17, when it started, you know, and it was not
I'm very familiar
secured.
with the story since one of my relatives was actually flying the plane. So I had good access to the documentation, and I'm pretty sure, according of what I've seen, that it was a Russian origin BUK unit, especially because they found the place on the ground from which it was started, and it was, you still had the tracks in the mud.
I'm very, of course, this is definitely possible, but at this time, you know, the investigations were not closed yet. So usually, you know, if you make a political decision, to be on the good guy's side, it's very important to wait for the investigations. Although it might come out that this person was the bad guy and was guilty of shooting them,
but
still
you already
have
had
to wait.
Spetsnaz in Ukraine. You had the Spetsnaz troops in Ukraine already at that point.
Yeah, but still, if you see it from Putin's vision, we're like looking at Erdogan massacring the Kurdish people there. And what we do is basically nothing. We just ignore those, massacres. And you know, after the breakdown of the Berlin Wall and something, we made a lot of promises towards Russia, and many of them were broken, especially if it comes to NATO bases and stuff. And if we mistreat Russia in a way like this, then we don't have to wonder if they start to evolve a very nasty nationalistic vision, which is definitely nothing to be acceptable, and especially seeing it from a point as a bisexual, openly bisexual woman, a lot of things in Russia are not the way they should be, but this is something that Russians have to work out for themselves.
But I also think it's not only the politics or the nasty way they do it. It's like standing Spetsnaz troops to. They always start with Spetsnaz troops, as I think now. First at the airport in Crimea, then in the Ukraine, and so on, and deploy troops and everything that was well known. But I think also in their own country. I don't think that it's some kind of fail of German politics that they start poisoning criticism people of the government, like putting polonium in the tea or stuff like that. That has nothing to do with the way Germany treats them, and also doing like manhunts on gay people and so on. So I don't think that. I think Russia is, of course, it was and is a very strong and important country all over the world. I don't think that Putin gets annoyed by like Angela Merkel not liking him or treating him well, especially because we have very good economic relationships. And even the sanctions were more funny like something. I think you know that when you got this letter, you're not allowed to enter Germany. They put it in their office and say, hey, I'm one of them. And it was like 12 people for 6 months. So I think the sanctions weren't too high. Even 6 of them were still allowed to enter.
Well, if you think what happened to the ruble afterwards, then you must say that a ruble, which is all of a sudden worth half of it, does certainly do something.
I don't think that that was the influence of Germany. We can't
And not only, of course, the influence of the oil price and a lot of different stuffs.
No, okay, it's very emotional. Yeah, it's very emotional, but you forgot my questions. What we should give Putin that he acts or helps more to stop the war?
I think if we give him a free Assad regime, he would be helping. I think it's the truth. If we if not support him, if we let him get Assad in power again, I think that's what he needs because of all the geostrategic interest in the region and so on. And he's on a good way of getting the Iraqi federal government. And then you would have as friends Syria, Iraqi central government, and Iran. And then he has a nice route for a pipeline, let's say. And I think that's not the full story, but an important part for him to get Assad back in power to control this part. And I think, as I think, he doesn't care about this one pilot shot down. He don't give a fuck on it, really. Sorry, if there are English listeners here. In Germany, we're allowed to say it. So I think letting him kill some people in Syria to get Assad back in power would be the thing he want to have.
Well, I think we have to change our way of politics towards Russia. So Russia can also see a partner in the European Union again. So they don't have to go and look for partners somewhere else.
I think, Leah, what you said about Russia's attitude to Western Europe is true, because it was, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago when Putin attended the Munich Security Conference, he proposed to have a free trade union from Lisbon to Vladivostok, and that was widely disregarded. But we shouldn't confound, say, the present situation of us towards Russia with the crisis in the Near and Middle East. I think we have a common interest with Russia regarding this conflict in the Middle East, because Russia has a jihadist problem at its southern border, and we don't want to have the IS in Turkey. So we should work together with Russia, seeing the common interests we have.
I have to make some compliments, and I hope I get them all together. At first, ISIS is not a new thing. They have a history about more than 20 years. And I think at the end of the story, it is the thing, they are the pure evil, but they are exact the same because they are part of Al-Qaeda. Means if ISIS is too extremist Sunni Muslim, then al-Nusra may be an acceptable alternative for the Sunni population. I think about that very hard. And that means we have to think about our partners in international, because it's a shape. If Saudi Arabia says, oh well, we will not take one refugee to help them, but we are giving you 40 million euros to build mosques in Germany, to have our Al-Qaeda affiliate guys into this mosque, and you will then have 20 years later a really problem with extremists. So means we have to think about our international partners and what are their real doing in the game. And that are, again, in this conflict in Syria, Saudi Arabia from the outer side, Qatar from the outer side, and the Turkey from the outer side. So they solving the problem in Syria, in Iraq, and in Kurdistan, in the Turkish part of Kurdistan, you have to talk to these three guys. And to be honest, the question with Putin, yes, that's very valuable, and we can talk evenings about what's happening in Ukraine and Crimea. But I think, to be honest, from the Western side of you, sitting down, taking the popcorn part and look what they do, that will, I think the most problems in 6 months will be gone, because then the Assad regime has won. And the question, everyone, yes, the truth is the first victim of war. Why are all minorities, including the Kurds, in Syria, are fighting on the side of the regime? That is the question you should have in Germany, and then if you have a good answer, then maybe you have an idea who is the good and who is the bad guy in that conflict.
If I remember correctly, you said something about the Kurds have oil, right? So a little, okay, but I mean a little is it's oil. Can you just very quickly sum up why do we like the Turks anyway?
First of all, I'm from Berlin. They invented the Döner, and that for all times I will love them for that.
Ow. That's wrong.
Okay. But don't. But let's say I think that's also a problem with. Usually we refer to the Syrians, the Turks, and so on. And of course we don't mean the Turks. We mean part of the government and so on. I think that's also the problem. While Erdogan is treating a lot of the Kurds in his country like shit, he's providing ammunition and weapons to the Peshmerga and training. And that's the first thing which I just don't get. It's so weird. On the other hand, of course, I think that Erdogan or his son is buying the oil from ISIS and so on, and that whole thing doesn't make any sense, or not too much from some points of view, but not really. Then Erdogan will not say anything against independent Kurdistan in the borders of the Iraqi Kurdistan today. And the whole thing is just too weird for me. Really, I don't know what happens in his mind. And so I think, of course, we still have to love the Turkish people who can't to do much against Erdogan and don't like him. On the other hand, maybe if the government changed someday when King Erdogan is dead and doesn't have a son or something like that, then the whole thing can change again. But I think from the geostrategic point of view, of course, that was told before, we can't kick them out of NATO. That will make it worse. We can't stop supporting them with the refugees because it will make things worse. So at the moment, whatever we do, we will make it worse. And I think that's a problem, that we are somehow trapped, that whatever we do against Erdogan, which would be the right thing, will make it worse for us. And on the other hand, we have the elections to come, and German politicians don't want to have more refugees here. simple thing. Of course, we say, sorry, refugees, it's just about your life. We are talking about percentage here. That's more important at the moment. And so I think this whole thing makes it so complicated that, let's say, from the political fact at the moment, we can't do anything, even it would be better to do. So I don't see it.
Just to add something to the whole weird idea of this, yeah. So basically, we're like handing over refugees into camps where, as you also said, radicals are hunting them to get them, make them part of ISIS or something, radical terrorist organizations, yeah. So actually, we're handing those refugees towards those radical people in order to just calm down our racist and anti-refugee propaganda people in Germany for the next elections. It's a really, really weird thing, yeah.
That's, I think, a good word at near to the end of our part here. For me, I have three things that we have to think about. The first thing is that it's necessary to do some to help people which when they are in such dangerous situations, if they are refugees and can't live anymore in the places where are home. So we have to help them on any way. There is no easy solution for the region and for the people over there, because we have so much different influences on the decisions they are to make. So it's really dangerous and really difficult to find the right way. And we need more and better informations and closer informations from the front lines and from the situation over there to make right decisions. Is that what we have in the moment? Okay. Then so I have thank you to you for this discussion. Thank you for the questions we have. And I think we have now a little break, so you can also talk with somebody and give more personal information to the people. And thank you for all.
Thank you.
Thank you for your invite and for the time.